Many thanks, John, for the very kind introduction. I'm very happy and honored to be here. First of all, I want to say I have been amazed and very excited to see the progress in this project and also to have the pleasure to work with so many colleagues with extreme professionalism and expertise. So I wanted to start with that. Today I will be talking about the process that the outputs of the policy outreach subtask that is part of the dissemination efforts of the project. And then the ultimate product of this process is to produce a position paper, specifically in the context of MultiCycle for multi-layer plastic packaging and flexible films. My colleague, Georg, has been a very important part of this process, so I asked him to also contribute to this presentation today. Sorry, I forgot that. Okay.
Try aiming the clicker to the back of the room if you can.
Okay. First of all, I want to say just a few words about the International Solid Waste Association. ISWA is the world's leading network promoting professional and sustainable waste management and resource management and the transition to a circular economy as well. ISWA represents all stakeholders within the waste management sector, from the public sector, the private, and also from academia. We have more than 1,300 members in 109 countries. And our mission is to promote and develop sustainable and professional waste management worldwide and a transition to a circular economy. To do this, ISWA has a number of bodies that have different functions. One of the bodies is the Scientific and Technical Committee that drives the scientific and technical outputs of ISWA, and it is composed of a number of working groups dealing with specific issues on waste management. The Scientific and Technical Committee has a technical program that produces outputs in order to increase available information and disseminate best practices all around the world. ISWA is a global network. We have members in 110 countries, as you can see, the countries that we have members in. And we have special regional chapters that also drive cooperation within regions in order to address specific problematics that arise there. Now, I will give you just a quick overview of today's presentation agenda. I will first talk a little bit about the task description. We'll give also an introduction to the position itself and the position paper. We're going to talk about the issues that we identified in the research project that it was the process for us to come to this presentation and outputs. And then I will talk a little bit about the proposals. You will find many of these issues and proposals very familiar also with the, you will find many similarities with the issues that were exposed in the previous presentations because we are talking about the same problematic, and I think all of the actors in the value chain, they have worked in order to identify those issues, and the results are going to show that as well, that we have an alignment as well. First of all, I want to give a brief overview to the task description and output. So this has been the product of a research project, and starting with a research design, of course, and research instruments, a survey and structured interviews with stakeholders, and also desk research on stakeholders' advocacy efforts of many organizations, including some of the organizations that presented today and will present later, of course. And then the policy outreach process. This was a process on where we engaged directly with our stakeholders and our members, the members of ISWA. And also we went a little bit, of course, outside our bubble in order to also reach out to users of plastics and producers of plastics as well. Then the positions formulation is the final stage of this process. And of course, it means the production of preliminary positions, and then keeping up the discussion with relevant parties, including today, because this is the output of this specific task. It has to go into the end of the project, because it needs to take into consideration absolutely all the developments and all the inputs that we can get, including in this event, of course, as well. And then the final tailoring and delivery of the position papers, which is going to come at the end of the project as well. I just want to show very briefly this graphical scheme that kind of like explains a bit the framework that we used in order to come to the rationale for proposing these positions, let's say. So if you can see here, there's an economic environment related to plastics production and recycling. And then there are some alternatives. One of them being, of course, the MultiCycle value proposition, which has been very nice explained in previous presentations. We all know the virtues by now and the proven success of the MultiCycle proposition and project in order to give a solution to the complex plastic problematic, which is very high on the agenda, also as mentioned before, and it is of the utter importance for civil society as well. So there is a number of conditions, instruments, market conditions, and let's call them influencing factors that play a role into defining the economic environment on which the alternatives for solving the plastic problematic can thrive, or they also can get stuck depending on these economic conditions and environment. Some of them are the regulation of plastics, waste management systems, economic conditions, market preferences, industry capacity and infrastructure, etc. So we took as framework to draw on the positions. We ask ourselves the question, what are the considerations that the actors that define these conditions from the governance system of plastics and plastics recycling and plastic production, which are decision makers, basically, government institutions, also international organizations, advocacy groups, etc. What are the best interventions that we can get from them in order for MultiCycle to be successfully adopted by the industry? And this was a little bit our framework. And for the introduction and panorama, I will give the word to my colleague, Georg.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me today. I'm briefly going to talk about the issues. We already heard a lot about challenges and limitations regarding plastic packaging. And we all know these illustrations. I just want to highlight why this is important and why we're here, as packaging uses 40% of the whole plastics demand in Europe. It produces 60% of all plastics waste. And as we can see in on the right illustration, recycling hasn't been too good lately. From 1950 to 2015, only a very small amount has been recycled. The last illustration I wanted to show you is the product lifetime distribution, where it is shown that packaging in general have only a lifespan of only 1 year. I'm sorry about not putting a reference there. It's from the paper Production, Use and Fate of All Plastics Ever Made from Science Advances of 2017. So when we go to the issues, we defined 4 different issues we wanted to talk about today. These are the availability of recyclable waste streams, regulations for human safety, degrading the threat of regulations for human safety, degrading circularity, the lack of harmonization regarding waste law, and the sorting depth not being sufficient to tackle current recycling targets. So the availability of recyclable waste streams refers to a lot of things. First thing is the sorting waste at source, meaning starting with the consumer behavior and also what kind of collection system is in place. When we have a mixed collection system, as we all know, we get complex mixed waste streams. And of course, also packaging design, as we know, multi-layer is currently non-recyclable, is a problem for recycling and causes recyclable waste streams not being there for us. When we look at sorting plants, they mostly are focused on throughput, so on the mass flow. A sorting plant has to have a certain mass flow in order to financially survive. So the focus is not really on the quality of the output, but on the throughput, so they can get enough money to live, actually. Then we have the problem of contaminants accumulating throughout the waste treatment system, depending on how that is working, and of course the lack of transparency. This refers to the next one, stating that regulations for human safety can degrade circularity. Every recycler has to comply with REACH, has to comply with the CLP regulation, and there are various regulations concerning food packaging material. And especially when it comes to food packaging material, transparency is mandatory. So the recycler has to know where does it come from, and there we go. What's the laser pointer? No. Oh yeah, sorry. Substances of very high concern are a special issue that has to be addressed. Then a lack of harmonization regarding the waste law stems from the Waste Framework Directive and the Directive on Packaging and Packaging Waste simply being directives. So they can be implemented individually, which resulted in different settings of EPR system, different settings of collection system, and different settings regarding the waste paths. We still have countries in Europe where landfilling is still possible. Let's take Austria, for example. The recovery path of plastics to the cement industry is really strong in Austria. So this brings me to the last point. Our current sorting depth is not sufficient to meet the recycling targets. This data stems from Plastics Europe, separate collection in Europe of 48%. We are estimating sorting efficiency in sorting plants of 60% and an efficiency of a conventional recycling facility of 70%. So when we put that together, we actually get a recycling rate of 20% right now, which can be possible. And even when we just take our system we have now, if we can increase efficiencies to 80% each, we would only get 51% of recycling of a recycling rate, which still would fail the set target of 55% in 2030. Why is that so? We obviously have a lack of investment security for alternative recycling technologies, and that's where Alan is going to. No, sorry, one slide. This one has been shown multiple times at presentations from the Association of Austrian Waste Management Companies. It's called VERB in German, where you can see that from waste to energy to chemical recycling to material recycling, the complexity and effort to make this happen increases a lot. But the value we want to have stays within the material recycling, of which the solvent-based recycling, like the Creosoft process, is definitely going to be a game changer. Now I'm going back to Alan.
Thanks, George. As George, clearly summarized the issues now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the proposals that we have been collecting. I want to say this is a synthesis of the research that we have done in consultation with all the stakeholders as part of our process. These proposals, I forgot to give a little disclaimer before. The proposals of this presentation and also the final position papers are not an official position of any of ISWA bodies or ISWA members. ISWA engages in the production of position papers for other issues, but it has a strict governance process that needs to go through the association. But for this one, is just the output of the technical research from ISWA staff as part of the MultiCycle project. So the proposals here you can see the summary of them. They address the regulatory framework, the issue of circularity, collaboration throughout the sub-value chain, and addressing alternative and innovative recycling technologies like MultiCycle. The first one, improvements on the regulatory framework. First, here I want to say that it doesn't mean that the regulatory framework is bad or something like this. It means that it needs to adapt and change with the times and adjust to the new challenges and the technologies as well that are available, such as MultiCycle. So this has to be in constant change in order to attain to the problems with the best resources that the technology provides at the moment. The first one, transparency and investment security. This needs to be addressed, of course. Transparency in the sense of to have a very clear framework in order to determine how actors can report exactly on the content and the components of the materials they use, and also other actors in the value chain to report as well on potential contaminations that can arise from processes such as sorting. The second one, mandatory recycling contents in new products. This is, of course, this is not a proposition for a command and control direct imposition, of course, on the industry. This means that a lot of the members, a lot of the stakeholders we interviewed, they believe that at least with the applications for plastics that is easy to include recyclates, it is important to give a push in order to start transitioning towards a new paradigm on when of where recyclates are included in the formulations. Optimize EPR models to increase waste streams going to recycling. This is, of course, just a natural step towards the optimization of the very successful instrument, which is EPR, that has proven to be very effective to keep waste streams clean and available for the recycling. Consistent definitions for the terms recycling, recyclability, and recycled materials. This is a call for making the definitions the same in the different regulatory frameworks of the European Union, because we can find differences depending on the piece of regulation we are looking at. Effectively following the waste hierarchy, this means that we need to incentivize and we need to promote the technologies and uses of waste that actually follow the waste hierarchy, because there are certain loopholes or well, some of the regulation is open for interpretation on for example, what is desirable if sending to waste to energy or actually recycling. So this needs to be really considered. Addressing new technologies and evaluating according to REACH. This is related to giving, also related to the first point, to give the security to users of recyclates that the recyclates from technologies such as MultiCycle to be able to be certified and to be free from substances of concern, which can, of course, grant the security that they need. And incentivizing and rewarding circularity. Here, I won't name one by one, but there are many different types of certification schemes and industry certifications as well that can actually give a clear perspective to consumers and to regulators as well about the compliance of the processes they use in order to obtain certain product that can be labeled as sustainable. In the case of packaging waste, of course, with now the public opinion being very interested in circularity for plastics, this can be very beneficial. And as well from business to business in order to improve the practices of the businesses and to add value to their products as well. A collaboration throughout the value chain is needed, some alignment between all the actors, because there seems to be some misalignments between sorters, recyclers, users of potential recyclates, also producers, or final producers of, for example, consumer packaged goods and so on. And a better alignment needs to be promoted here. EPR schemes can play a key role in promoting and financing the modifications of this. And disruptive technologies can really help, such as blockchain and Internet of Things, can really help to share to improve the ways of sharing information between value chain actors in order to provide reliable and consistent data for them to take decisions on changing and adapting their recycling processes and steps in order to inform better decisions. Addressing and recognizing innovative recycling technologies as MultiCycle, this means that it is needed to recognize that when a value proposition with very high potential of being escalated and getting important contributions to solve the plastic problematic needs to be recognized as well by policymakers, and thus incentivizing instruments in order to transition to the full adoption. Also, it is important as well that this recognition has to be also supported by the idea that a technology such as MultiCycle can be actually be modular and be implemented without drastically changing the current recycling infrastructure. So this is something that will have a lot of potential for contributing to the plastic problematic, and finally adding value to the system, of course, and not looking at waste, as Peter mentioned before, as an economic burden, but as a real opportunity in order to transition to a truly circular economy. I think that was the last slide. Thank you for your attention.